Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. Host JP John Poz with me today. Very special guest, first ever podcast. He's a former WCW superstar known as Sick Boy. He is Mr. Scott Vick. Scott, welcome in. How you doing?
Hey, good, John. How are you?
Very good. What's been going on in your world? Anything wrestling related in a long time? What have you been up to?
Not much. I mean, I've been out of the wrestling limelight for a while, and I've just recently kind of started to come back into the light. I figured it's time to come back and be a little more present in the world of wrestling. I mean, I kind of dabbled on and off through the years. You know, would do some shows and some fan fest, but not many. This is the right now the biggest presence I've kind of had. I've had in social media in quite some time.
So where have you been? Like, why no wrestling? What's been going on?
No real particular reason. I think I just when I got out of it, I just had just kind of been burned out from it, just with things that have gone that had happened, you know, in my career, and went down a path where, you know, started having kids and just life, and I just was at a point where I needed something a little different. And so I just was like, you know, I'm going to focus on my family and go in that direction. And I had a business at the time as well that I was focused on. So I just kind of went there. And like I said, it was that tumultuous time where I was in WWF at the time, and they had just bought WCW. And it kind of started to go in a direction. I just, it was a lot of up and down, different things going on. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to step back. And I really didn't push anything. And I think it's one of those things where you go, I'm going to sit back for a little while and take your time. And then months turn into years and years turn into a decade kind of thing.
Time flies, right? I mean, it goes by so fast.
Without a doubt, it does.
So away from wrestling, you were doing fitness and stuff? Like, what was like your main gig that you were up to?
I had started a fitness company, and we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had started doing that, and I really started focusing on that at the time, and so that's really what I was putting my interest into. I miss the wrestling at times. But I was like, this is kind of where I'm at. And like I said, I just kind of got to the point where I was just kind of fried with a lot of stuff that was going on, the behind the scenes type stuff. And I was just like, you know, this is good for me right now.
Now, I want to rewind all the way back because I want to know like how you actually got into the business to begin with, because that's interesting to me because you're a pretty big guy. Obviously, I think football was like your main background, right, before you got into wrestling?
Absolutely. I was always been a wrestling fan. I grown up in the South and born in Charlotte and lived in, you know, Columbia. I was NWA, Mid-Atlantic was huge. You know, it was Four Horsemen and Tully, you know, those guys, and Dusty and Magnum and Nikita Koloff. But football was my first love. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play in the NFL. And once that came to an end, wrestling came into the forefront. I was in high school and went to the Savannah Civic Center. I think it was my sophomore year in high school. And actually, Sean Hare was with me.
Wow.
Yeah, we went to high school together.
Damn, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we're friends. Yeah, he was. Sean was two years older than I was. I think at the time. I think he was a senior, my sophomore year, and I don't know how you know, we ended up or how he ended up with me at that show. I think he was starting to get into some different stuff at the time, you know, in terms of like mixed martial arts and things like that, and yeah, we were at the Civic Center, and at intermission, Michael Capetta saw us, and he was the ring announcer for WCW. And he came up and said, "Hey, you guys are kind of, what's your issue? What's going on with you? What's your deal?" And we're like, "Oh, I'm high school and stuff." And I mean, because I was at that time probably 6'2", 6'3", probably 210 in there, and Sean was, same thing, maybe a little bit tall, like 6'4"-ish, good build. So he said, "I'm a talent scout as well," and he wanted us to, like, after high school, come to Atlanta to train. And I was like, "Man, that's great, but I'm like football." And Sean didn't really want anything to do with it at the time. He was just like, I think, flattered. And I was as well, but I was like, football is my first love. And he gave us a card, and I kept the card. I don't know what Sean did with his, because after high school, we kind of went, in different directions and didn't stay in touch. But I held on to that card until my football career ended in college as a result of injury. And I gave him a call, and he was no longer with the company. But they were like, come to Atlanta anyways. This was going into summer '96, and the Olympics were Atlanta was hosting the Olympics. And so kind of just on a whim said, "Hey, I want to do this." Like, I was just at that point where I'm like, my gut was telling me, like, let's go do this. And it's funny because my roommate at the time was playing with me we played at South Carolina, University of South Carolina. And he got into it, and he was a big guy. He was like 6'6", 300 pounds. And he wanted to do it with me. And we called, and they were like, "Hey, come." If he's no longer with the company, like I said, and started making plans to go to Atlanta.
I love that you were at school with Sean O'Hara. I got to ask about that. What was he like? Because I've heard stories of him just like not beating people up bad, but basically beating up some people pretty bad. Like, was he a bad dude?
He wasn't a bad dude, in terms of just being like a bad person. He had a short temper.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about it. And in high school, I mean, he was known to get a little physical with people. But always pretty easy going. But I think later in high school is when he kind of started getting in, like I said, really into the mixed martial arts and stuff. And I think that kind of started really to prompt some of that. And that movement towards being a little more aggressive and things like that. And like I said, we didn't have a ton of interaction together. We had a lot of really mutual friends. I don't want to say I am like a social friend, in terms of just like, yeah, we knew each other. We worked out some together, not a lot, but we did. And it was like, if it was one of those occasions where he was out, I was out, we hooked up, hung out kind of thing. I think a lot of whatever path he started to go down, he went after high school. Just in terms of the aggression and some of the stuff. Cause I mean, like I said, it's well documented,
Yeah, not like bad dude, bad person, like badass, like he's an ass kicker type. You know what I mean? Like he
didn't take any shit from anybody, and he, like I said, he was very short tempered. Like, I'm more laid back. I mean, we couldn't be almost more opposite. I'm more chill. I'm super laid back. I'm easygoing. I don't want to flip that switch until I have to. I mean, you can call me any name in the book. You can look at me sideways, 1,000-yard stare, death stare, whatever you want. I don't care. It's not going to phase me. I'm not going to be like, that guy's looking at me, I'm going to go bust him up or something. And I think he was a little more on that other end of the spectrum,
Yes. So interesting that you guys kind of parted ways, but then both end up in WCW, different points. But I mean, that's kind of like a strange coincidence. He must have still had that card somewhere, right?
Yeah, I don't even know exactly what his connection, how he got hooked up with WCW, because I think I had just left or was getting ready to exit out when he came in. And I think he was I think he was training at the time. And it's wild because we never really like crossed paths in that business, except, you know, as I was leaving. And then kind of same thing with WWF. I was working my way out of there, and he had come in. They actually did us in a tag match in WWF, in a dart match.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Against each other,
which nobody even knew. Like we were that we had any high school connection whatsoever, you know, until I think I told you it was Johnny Ace was running things at the time. And, you know, I told Johnny, I said, you know, they put us in that tag, and I said, you know, because afterwards he was like, y'all look really good together. You were like good. And I said, yeah. I said, well, you know, we went to high school together. I go, there's a storyline right there. And again, part of one of my frustrations, that sounds, we want to start doing house shows with y'all as a tag, and you know, I'm gonna get in touch, and just never did. You know, I called and, you know, thought there was going to be some traction there. And once again, it just kind of led down a road where it was like a disappointment. And I'm just like, you know, it's kind of the final nail in the coffin for me.
Is there any like explanation there though? Like that why aren't you guys doing anything? Did they ever say anything, or they don't even bring it up?
I never got anything from it.
Wow.
In terms of why it didn't work. It just went from, I mean, I remember talking to Johnny Ace on the phone, and he's like, you know, we want to put you on house shows and give this a run and see, you know, how you would work out as a tag team. I'm like, awesome, let me know. And I'll call you whatever day. Don't hear from them. Try to get in touch. Couldn't get in touch. And it just kind of died out from there for me. I think I did one more match. I did a dart match with John Cena in 2005. And I think that was, because that was my last match with WWF.
Wow. Cena too. How apropos, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. He had come out of the prototype, you know, gimmick. And he was just working as Cena. And they just brought him up, and actually that was really on the heels of that tag match with Sean, because they brought me in. They kind of called out of the blue. They were in Atlanta, which is where I lived at the time, and had me come to the show. And yeah, they put us in a match, and we did the match, and that was the last match I did with them.
Man, the 2002, so it's prototype John Cena, and it's kind of
2005.
So nobody really knows Cena, as far as like nobody really knows who he is at that point.
No, because they like the whole ruthless aggression hadn't really started yet. Because he wasn't on TV.
Yep. So what did you think about him? Like, did you think like this guy's going to be a big star? You know what I mean? Be one of the biggest stars of all time. Did you think anything of that in Cena or no?
No, I mean, I hadn't seen a lot of John prior to that. I saw some stuff, and I mean, he was pretty robotic at the beginning. You know, I think it's, you know, and I didn't look, I mean, I didn't look at that and go, oh man, this guy's going to be like, you know, I mean, he had the look without a doubt. And the match was good. He was smooth in the match, you know, and, but I don't think anybody can really tell, you know, I mean, you can look at people who have potential. I mean, it's like me when I first came in and, with WCW, I mean, I was getting a lot of fanfare or just publicity, like a young up and comer, you know, kind of thing. And, it never worked. It didn't work out.
So when you were that new up and comer and you are basically a rookie in WCW, you go right to the power plant and you have a contract, or how does that actually happen where you go like to train or wherever you go and they get a contract? Is it the power plant?
Yeah, that's where I went. Like I said, they were like, hey, come up, and we'll work you out. They worked us out to see if we could move and stuff like that. And at that time in '96, the WCW had moved their headquarters from Atlanta to Orlando. Because we did all like the tapings there at MGM Studios. So just to get out of the mayhem of Atlanta with the Olympics, they had moved it down to Orlando, and I was at the power plant, and we had worked out, and they were like, "Well, we want to do a contract, and it was this thing where it was kind of like dragging feet on it, kind of. I mean, we went through the whole power plant workout. We did the 3 days of just the most brutal, agonizing thing I'd ever experienced in my life. And I mean, I tell people, I'm like, I've been through a lot of stuff, but that was one of the hardest things I had ever done. And so yeah, we went through that, and just a funny story on there. Sarge Dwayne Bruce, he had been down in Orlando we had started, I think we started the workouts on we did I think it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and he got there on the last day of the workouts. My first day, I bruised my heel in the ring because I was just wearing amateur wrestling shoes. And so I get this heel bruise, which is just, I don't know if you've had one, but it's extremely painful. It just feels like a railroad tie, in the heel of your foot. And you just can't put any weight on it. And I'm doing one-legged squats, and we have, we're doing air squats and going out and running and in the ring. And it was just brutal. And so he comes in on the last day, and I think he came in halfway through, and we were doing this stuff, gauntlets, and they would have 3 rings set up, and you would have to run, hit the ropes, cut a flip, roll out, go to the next ring, and go through all 3 rings, right? So I'm going through that, and I'm gimping. I mean, I can't even I'm like, I'm on my toes on my right leg, and trying to get through this. And Sarge comes in, and he goes, he grabbed me by the back of the neck and was like, you want to be in this business? You don't have, you're limping and you're lagging behind. You don't have what it takes. Will you come into my house and do this? And took me out the front door and threw me out.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Threw me out. And I hit and roll, and I'm sitting there. We had some steps in the front of that building we were at, and I'm sitting there, and 𝐕𝐈𝐒 came out, and I'm thinking oh, I'm done. I'm finished. This is it. And Pez comes out, and he goes, hey man, come on, come back in here, and took me into the little locker room area that we had. And I'm sitting there, and Pez goes, just relax, chill out. You're all right. You're all right. And in comes Sarge. And it was one of the coolest things I in the business for me. He came in because Sarge is a hard nut. He, he demands respect, and you have to earn it from him. And he came in, and he just said, Pez told me that you had gotten injured on the first day, and you've been going through this with the bruise heel. And he said, I just want to apologize for what I did. And he said, you're good. And after that, we became really good friends.
Wow. So he actually apologized for it. But that's crazy. Why the heck did he kind of snap like that? It's like,
you know what, man, it's that, that thing at that time, it was and especially with WCW opening up the power plant, they had the hotline people could call. Cause listen, there would be guys there at the tryouts that there would be 20 guys there. And within 10 minutes, there might be 2 left. And, old school guys, like Mike Winter, who was a trainer there, and 𝐕𝐈𝐒 and Sarge. But, of course, Sarge was in Florida at the time, and some took it a little more serious than others, but they were you sitting on the sofa, you think you can come and do our business. You see it on TV, you see other guys that are overweight or whatever in great shape, whatever the case may be. And they were like, the whole part of that trial to see is who had heart, who had desire. And of course, no one, like with me, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but it's like, I was just like, I wasn't going to quit, and I think that's one of the things that, they saw in that, like, Pez saw it, because Pez took a big interest in me right out of the gate. And, once he explained it to Sarge, he was like, yeah, this guy's been going through doing squats and running on one leg for 2 days. And yeah, he's just like, and Sarge is a little fiery.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Yes,
which is good. He's an awesome guy. Loved him to death. Was awesome to me, my time there. But yeah, it's just one of my favorite stories,
He's intense, like, to say the least. He's like, what I mean, kicking out, and you're a big guy too. It's like, oh my God, like this guy.
Well, first of all, I was so tired. I was hurting so bad.
Yeah.
I think a little 10-pound girl could have, or dude, whoever, could have just carried me run me out of there and thrown me out.
It's
that bad.
He is a nice guy, but he is. You could tell he's very intense.
He's very intense, and just like a lot of those guys, coming up the time he came up, they took it very seriously, the business.
Yep.
And wanted to find out who really had it. And it's like, you don't really understand. I mean, wrestling, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Football was a cakewalk compared to wrestling.
A lot of guys have said that, like with the training and stuff. Like a lot of guys have said that with the training, like it's way more intense than football or other sports that they've done. It's like crazy what the Sarge was doing down there at the Power Plant.
And I didn't have it as bad as some guys. Like in terms of like guys stretching me out, and I had some of that stuff, and we got a little taste of it, but it just even once you get past that part, just the first match I worked in, I thought I was going to die, and I was in pretty good shape. I'd been working matches, and it was all I could do to get to the back, and I thought I'd like chug some gasoline and chase it with a match. My lungs were on fire, and I remember I was like, let me get through. Let me get out of the way of the people. And I get in the back, and I just like collapsed. And it was a whole different thing when you go in front of people, cause I would work down at the Power Plant with, Chris Canyon and Brian Clark and Ray Glacier.
Yep.
Billy Kidman, all those guys kind of brought me in cause there was a friendship there. Very I could sit there and work matches down there and be fun. And it was the first time in front of a crowd. And really going out, because I made the fatal mistake of laying a lot of stuff out. Which when I would do stuff with like Chris, because Chris Canyon would always work with me in the ring at the Power Plant. We'd just get and just like, we're going to do a match, and we just called everything, as we did it. And, the first time I laid it out, you just get, you get so blown up. Now you start forgetting everything, Yep. And you're just gasping for air, and it kind of turned into that. And it got easier, from there.
So what's like when you are developing yourself, is the first name Lance Ringo? Where do you get that name? Who's making where do you get your character and your name from as you're going through the Power Plant?
The Lance Ringo thing, that's an interesting little thing there. I had no idea that was going to happen. I was out to dinner with Ron Reese, the mummy.
Oh,
and I think Chris was there, Canyon was there, and it was like at 9:00 on Sunday night, and Chris gets a call and hands me the phone. He's like, bro, it's Paige, DDP. And hands me the phone. He goes, bro, you're coming to Nitro tomorrow. You're going to work me. Be ready. And I'm like, I didn't have any. I had one set of trunks. Like, I was that fresh, really kind of into it all. Because I like caught on really quick to the biz, to working. It was just very natural for me. I could throw punches. I could throw kicks. You know, I was doing springboard stuff that, you know, big guys weren't doing. I was, and Chris and those guys saw that. And that's why they kind of took me down. And Chris was like, you don't need to be working with them. Come with us and start working with us. And of course, that kind of then brought me underneath the Diamond Dallas Page umbrella, because they were all friends. And everybody's, you know, really about the business and being a good worker and being able to, you know, really make your stuff look good and physical and tight and all that kind of stuff. And so I had no heads up. I had to wrestle in, like I said, I luckily had some trunks, and I had my amateur wrestling shoes, because Bobby the Brain said, I think he made a reference in that match that he's got bowling shoes on, which, you know, Bobby the Brain was an awesome guy. And, but yeah, I was just kind of ill prepared, and I was ready to go. I mean, it was like, it felt good. It felt comfortable, but, yeah, I was like 9 o'clock that night. Then the next morning I was on a flight with the Steiners and Booker T, and a bunch of other guys on that flight. I can't remember everybody on it. And, next thing I know, I'm in Roanoke, Virginia, and Paige is like, oh, we got to come up with a name. And he goes, I think he wanted to do, Johnny Ringo from, like Wyatt Earp.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and I get, because, you know, Paige is very much like, hey, you need to have something people are going to recognize, you know, and to me, I kind of felt like, this is rushed, man. Like, this is my debut. Like, I don't want it to be like this, you know, like, I didn't know what was going to go from here or what the deal was. So I was kind of like, I don't know about the name, man. I'm not really digging it. And then it just kind of was, he went, well, because I was like the Johnny thing. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be Johnny. I was thinking like Johnny from Karate Kid, you know? And I was like, I don't know. And he goes, well, Lance or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. At this point, I was just like, because Paige will just wear you down to where you're like, okay, whatever you want. And at that point, it was like, it's about an opportunity, you know? And so that's how the Lance Ringo thing came about.
And it's a big match too, because your debut, DDP, he was over at that point when your debut. I mean, he's about to start to get like on a roll there too. So that's a big spot.
Yeah, because he had just started the deal with Macho Man. Because I came out with the Playboy that had Kimberly in it. And, you know, I think Macho, even at the end of that match, had something to do with it, not in the ring with us, but I think they had something on, you know, after that. But I think it was like right at the start of him making that run with Macho Man.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, where he went from there.
Unbelievable. Were you nervous though at all, or do you like, okay, he's going to carry me, like we're going to be good here?
I didn't even think about him carrying me. I just, you know, when I knew it was for me was when I walked out there, it just felt natural. Like, I mean, I didn't think about the crowd. It really didn't even faze me. I mean, I've been in big crowds with football.
Right.
Now, not like that, where it's just, you know, two dudes in a ring, you know, and all eyes are on you. I say that now, but I didn't even think about it then. More for me, I was like, who am I? You know, what's gonna set me apart? Who is Lance Ringo? It's just a name. You know, so it's like I kind of like, you know, I think more of that was going through my head in terms of like, you know, I just don't want to be generic guy walking out there, which is what I ended up being. Yeah, I think that was more going through my mind than, oh my gosh, I'm, you know, I'm here in WCW. This is my first match. This is live on Nitro. It didn't even really faze me.
So what happens after that? I mean, obviously you lose to DDP. So you're gone for a while. They want to repackage you, and then you're going to come back as Sick Boy, or like what happens in between? How come you're gone for several months off TV?
Yeah, I can't. I don't know the time frame, the dates on it, but it wasn't long when. That's when they signed Raven. Not long after that. Let's say like a few months. I don't know. I don't remember the date of that match where it was at.
Somewhere. Yep.
Time frame wise, but
right.
It wasn't too long after that, and I remember Raven had come down to the power plant because he was friends with Paige, going back to his Scotty Flamingo and doing all that in WCW. You know, they were all, they were all friends, and Canyon was like, it was Chris that goes, because Raven wanted new guys for this Flock gimmick. He wanted guys that no one had seen before, and Chris was a good friend of mine, and Chris pushed me to him and was like, "Hey, you want somebody new? You want a worker? Kid can work. Nobody's seen him. You know, he did the one thing with Paige, but you want to, Kid can do all kinds of stuff." And that was the introduction. And I think it was a couple months probably before it kind of got finalized. And before we had a name or anything, I remember Chris just going, they're going, "Hey, it's done. Like, you're like, we had to get everything okay through Eric Bischoff and all that." And they did. And he said, you're good to go. And that was the launching point for Sick Boy.
Where does that name come from? What is Sick Boy?
Train
What
spotting.
is the name? Oh, right. Oh, okay. I never even put that
Yeah,
together.
we had Raven gathered everybody up and was like, "Hey, man, we need to like do some research for the gimmick for the Flock." And we all went to Chris's house, and of course, Rave provided the movie, and was like, because it's a bunch of drug addicts. Yeah. And not that we were trying to portray drug addicts, but it was just finding some research and some kind of, at least, act a certain way and kind of portray a certain, image. And we were watching that movie, and I don't remember really anything about it, honestly, other than just sitting there. And I was just kind of like, whatever, I really don't care about this movie. It wasn't anything much. And then all of a sudden, Rave goes, "Sick Boy," because there's a character in the movie. And he goes, "That's your name." And it was just like that. And I was like, okay, And so then Sick Boy was, I guess, really born that night. Because Ray had a lot of leeway with what he wanted to do with his gimmick. It wasn't, he had a decent amount of say in where he wanted to go. It's not like we had to get a lot of things approved. And again, this is just a name. So it's, obviously everybody's got to check off on it, but, it all kind of, we just kind of started to run with it. I think everybody kind of started to develop, because at the time, I think Stevie was there, but just getting ready to leave. And Perry, I think it was like, at the core of it is like me, Stevie had left, before we really got into the gist of it, and it was Perry and Perry Saturn and Kidman.
I literally just talked to Raven. I was saying, "Who's your favorite members of the Flock or whatever?" And he said Kidman and Sick Boy. He's like, because they were two guys kind of unknown. I wanted to bring them in and bring them into the fold. I was just kind of surprised, not really that he would say you two, but it was just like, wow, that was interesting that he kind of was saying what you were saying. Like, he wanted new guys, he wanted fresh blood, he wanted guys he hadn't seen before, and he loved that you guys were a part of the Flock.
Yeah, I mean that was a big part. He just didn't want to. He wanted to really have something fresh and new. He didn't want somebody that's been repackaged a number of times or anything like that. And that's what he was really searching for. And of course, I mean, you can only get so much out of it, you know, and Kidman was pretty limited. He had done some stuff with WCW. You know, I think he had done some Saturday night, you know, tapings and things like that. So, you know, we were like, you know, really the two, you know, really perfect fits at the time for it, as far as anything, you know, having that, what his vision really was, you know, and both of us, I mean, we could work, you know, obviously, I mean, what Kidman went on to do. And you know, he liked that aspect of it. And really the fact that just no one had seen us before. It was something new. And, you know, it was a hard thing to kind of come into, because I really had to learn how to do that, you know, that character, you know.
So what did you think of like your maturation process through the character as the flock is kind of maturing too and starting to really get over?
Yeah, it was, like I said, we had gone to, I mean, my first anything with the flock was in MGM Studios. And we were doing tapings. And of course, you know, we tape, you know, I don't know what it was. We did like 4 shows a day or 6 shows a day. I think it's like 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, something like that. And of course, these were going to air down the road. So at this time, they're going, we're not even going to have you wrestle. You'll just come and sit, because we just come out and sit out ringside. I think Perry did some matches. I don't know how much Rave did. I can't remember. We did some stuff, and I want to say, so like, I was just really trying to get a feel for it. I mean, it was so quick. It was literally, I think I had like a week to put together the character when I knew that I was going to be going to MGM. And it was like, you know, I went to like having to find out what I'm going to, you know, what I didn't have a persona that I knew I wanted to do. Obviously, you know, clothes and things like that. I kind of had a feel. I'm like, okay, it's grunge look. I can cut off some jeans. I can find some T-shirts. Eventually, I'll find, you know, my niche and roll with it. And which I did as far as the wear goes and things like that. And so for that whole week, I was down there and was just sitting ringside. And, you know, he said, they were like, hey, you're not going to work, this, that, and the other. And so this is a funny story. It was, I think, our last day there. Everybody was going out, and I hadn't gone out. You know, I'm like, I'm green, I'm new, I'm wanting to do a good job, I'm focused on what I need to do, I'm not going anywhere. And last night it was like, well, you know, I'm not gonna, I'm not working. Let's go out. And of course, everybody went out until about 3 or 4 in the morning. And I wake up in my kitchen floor of the condo I'm renting, the phone in my hand. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to be at the studios. It was one of those kind of nights. And luckily I had my bag already packed. And so get to the show. First show, it was one of the first couple of matches. I had a match. And I remember walking up and Terry Taylor goes, oh my God, would you just come out of the club? I was like, oh, close to it. And I was hurting. I think I was still a little woozy from earlier in the evening. And I had Pat Tanaka was my first match at MGM. And I remember I'm so grateful it was Pat, because he was so good. Yeah. And I just told him, and he knew. I mean, they could tell. He's like, dude, because kid, you're looking kind of green behind the gills. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, you know, we'll get through this. And I said, well, listen, I'll just, if I start feeling ill or something, I'll give you the little noogie and just chunk me out. And of course I did. I think it was I think I took a hip toss or back drop or something, and my stomach just went up into my throat and it didn't come back down. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get sick. And I just was like, throw me out. And he threw me out, and I hit the floor and went up under the ring and got sick.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was the first, and I said I'll never do that again. Like, lesson learned. Yep.
It does kind of fit though, the sick boy gimmick. You know what I mean? It does fit technically.
It did, and I was like, well, okay, well, I'd rather just act it than actually physically, go with it, because I was like, that was just miserable. Like, I didn't want my first match to be like that, especially with a vet like Pat, and I just didn't want that to be. But I've never seen the match. I don't even. In my mind, I remember it being really smooth and really good. But I was just like, yeah, this is not how I really want this to go. But nobody had anything negative to say about it, and I think it went off without even knowing that. I was still feeling the effects of the party that night. And then after that, it was, now we're in this groove. And I think it was like that next week, it was Monday night, and we were in Tampa for a Nitro. And now, granted, I just been at MGM for the week, and I was doing like everybody else. We were just sitting in chairs. That's all we had. We're just sitting in chairs and whatnot, ringside at the studios where we did the matches. And I remember I get called by Paige to come up into the seats at the arena. And I walk up, and Eric Bischoff is there. They sit me down. And I can't remember which one was said this to me. I think it was Eric. But he goes, man, you got to do something different from everybody else. Like, you need to find your own niche. You need to do something. He goes, because as fast as you got here, you can be gone just as fast. Wow. And I was like, okay, that's when I started sitting in the floor that night. Because everybody else was, we'd come and sit ringside.
Yeah.
At the live events. And I sat in the floor and did the whole thing through the rails and, the guardrails, and kind of went on that. That's kind of where it started kind of formulating my head. I'm going to kind of do a, kind of like hear voices. Like sometimes when I'd come out, I would look up into the rafters, kind of like, and move my mouth. Like, I was talking to something, just kind of spin around, or I'd chew on the rope. And, it was almost kind of like I took a little bit of like Bruiser Brody, who was one of my favorites. Just kind of elements, like I think there could even be like a little bit of Mankind in there. I mean, just a little bit,
yep.
Because obviously I'm not doing the things that Mick would do. But I was just, I was kind of looking at those guys that kind of had that, that personality. And I was like, okay, maybe that's the basis for this character, and hopefully can start to grow with. And it just, it kind of did. And then it just flattened out.
Love this, like the sick boy name. I love the flock and everything. When you guys start getting rolling, I feel like you have some matches with Benoit, great stuff.
Yeah.
Goldberg is starting to get super over. Goldberg versus the Flock is so good. What was it like with Goldberg at that point? Because not only you guys getting over, he is getting these massive, massive pops when he's like feuding with you guys. Man, the spear on you, the feud with Saturn before the Raven feud was great, and then the Raven feud was great. Him beating the hell out of Reese, him destroying you, a few awesome spears. What was it like with Goldberg?
Awesome, because it was so he was so over. Again, it's almost no matter what you do, you're going to get a pop, and that is good. But Bill was really green. I mean, I was too.
Right.
But that whole run was just great with him, and I worked him several times, and we, I enjoyed all of it. All the matches that we had, the interactions that we had with Raven, and our run-ins that we did, but I want to say one that sticks out. We were in Philly, and Terry Taylor was one of the agents at the time, and Terry was a fan of mine. I think, you know, he really tried to push he liked what I could do, and later on, he was the reason I went to a big part of going in WWF. Which even cooler story can even backtrack further. WWF actually offered me and Luther Reigns. You remember Luther?
Oh yeah, yep.
Offered us a contract before WCW. We actually videoed a match at the Power Plant and sent it to WWF.
Whoa, you and Horseshoe! Wow, crazy.
Yeah. Let me tell this, because this is some good back stuff that's really cool.
Yeah.
Matt and I were roommates in Atlanta, and he was friends with Jack Doan, the ref in WWF. And we were at WCW at the time, and you know, they had been dragging their feet on the contract stuff with me, and it was Christmas. It was around December, and Jack was like, "Hey man, you want to roll?" Matt was like, "You want to roll down and go see my buddy Jack?" There, and I think it was Daytona. WWF was at, and I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So he and I roll down to Daytona, and we're in the back, and Vince comes up and asks who we are, and you know, we're like, "Hey," you know, Matt was like, "Jack's my buddy from high school, and we came down to see him." And he goes, "Are you workers?" And we're like, "Yeah." So we're with, you know, at the Power Plant. He goes, "You under contract?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "Well, I'd love to see some video." And so, of course, you know, we're like stoked, and like, "Oh, this is super cool." And absolutely. So we come back, and it was Brian Clark, Wrath. He was all in that group with Kidman and Canyon and Glacier and guys, and we were like, "Man, they want some footage." And so they set up the camera, and we filmed a workout session, a match, sent it up to WWF. And Bruce Pritchard called us and flew us up to Stanford. And Matt and I went up there and met with Bruce on a Friday. And I think we worked out, and they had at the time they didn't have a developmental system. They just had like the warehouse, the studio, the TV studio, and they had a ring in it. And I think we did a match for him in there, and he said, "Hey, we want to sign you guys, and here's what we can do for you. We'll pay you X amount," and I can't remember what it was, but we'll put you up, we'll pay for your housing, all that, and you know, you guys will come up here. And we're like, absolutely, this is what we want to do. Like that's where we wanted to be. At that time, we thought that this was the right direction to go. And so we flew back to Atlanta, and he was like, "We're going to FedEx the contracts to you." So, of course, you know, I'm sitting here kind of going, okay, well, I've got this WCW stuff going on, but they haven't offered anything. So I called Chris and asked his advice and said, you know, just call Paige, tell him what's up. And I did. And he said, and he said, "I'll set up, you need to talk to Eric." You know, because I think at that time, I mean, Paige, you know, because Paige knew what I could do, what I was capable of, because he had come down and worked with me and put me through his little, you know, his test to see, you know, what I had and if I had the desire and heart. And so, you know, we became friends, and so he said, you know, come and talk to Eric on that following that Monday, which ironically was in Savannah, Georgia, where it all kind of really started for me.
Yeah. And
Matt and I came down to Savannah, met with Eric, and told him what had happened. And he was like, "Look," he goes, "appreciate you coming to me with this." He goes, "I think Vince is going to offer you this much. I'll offer you this amount." And he goes, you haven't, the offer's on the table till Wednesday, but no hard feelings, whatever you want to do. And he was like, you know, that was it. And so Matt and I still were like, this is awesome, but WCW was going to be a little more money. but we felt like WWF was where we wanted to go.
Right.
And we were waiting on those contracts, and they were supposed to get there on Monday or Tuesday, and they didn't get there. And so we called Bruce Pritchard, and they're like, Bruce, you know, hey, we went and talked to Eric, you know, had to do the you know, stand up business, professional thing to do. And he offered us, and I said, and we told him, we said, this isn't about money for us. We're not trying to negotiate anything else. We want to come with you guys. We just don't have the contracts. Our guarantee with WCW is off the table on Wednesday. I mean, we have their contracts. They have to be signed by Wednesday. And he said, I don't know. They should have reached you. And he honestly said, and this is crazy, he was just like, look, he goes, I'll just be honest with you. We're not in a really good place right now, because this was kind of their downtime. Because Stone Cold hadn't hit yet. I think he was ringmaster. And, you know, they weren't doing really well at the time. And he said, you know, we're kind of, you know, in a position. He goes, I'm going to just be honest with you. Your best thing is to sign there, learn as much as you can. And he goes, do your thing. And within 4 years or so, you just know you're welcome here, and you'll be here at some point. And that was our intro into, at that point, then we signed with WCW. And then, yeah.
Crazy how it worked out.
Isn't that crazy?
Right? Yeah, it's crazy how that all works out. Man,
yeah,
weird.
And it literally did. It was a little shorter than that, actually, when I signed, because I left WCW before they bought it, before anybody else came over. But it was close. It's about I think, like, because I signed in into 96, maybe 97, and signed with WWF in 99. So it was really close to what he said.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was our end. And of course, Matt, you know, stayed, you know, with WCW.
That's so interesting, like how you almost WWF, then you end up back in WCW, then you end up back in WWF. But when you're there in WCW, did you expect more out of the flock? Like, did you expect more out of that group? Were they adding too many guys to the group? Like, what happened that you kind of didn't get a bigger push in WCW as you're going through?
I don't know. You know, I think it was just a culmination. I mean, NWO was so hot.
Yeah.
You know, and two, WCW was just so, compared to WWF, just disorganized. Just in their professionalism. I mean, just trying to get a flight change was like pulling teeth. You know, and WWF would just be like, okay, you know, like, hey, I know I'm booked to fly here, but I need to fly home. Sure, we'll take care of it. It was like, you know, and just professionalism was just really different. You know, I think, and you can't fault a lot of guys, because it's like, you know, they were just getting paid so much money, regardless of whether they worked, you know, because WCW was giving guaranteed contracts, and WWF was like, you know, it was, you got a downside guarantee. And then the more you work, the better you are, the higher you move up on the card, the more money you make. You can make 10 times your downside guarantee. And I think it just kind of got lax with all that. And I don't know all the ins and outs. I mean, there's been rumblings of, you know, Raven a lot of times was sometimes, like I said, he's very vocal, maybe too vocal at times with things, and kind of pushing. Yeah. And he was trying to push the gimmick, and as well we should, because we were hot. I mean, honestly, Lodi had more heat than any of us, or not any of us, but almost anybody. You know, and I mean, we did collectively, because, you know, we would, you know, when we hit a corridor, whatever match we came down on, whole place would turn and boo. I mean, we got, you know, beers chunked at us, rolls of quarters, batteries. I got spit on with tobacco juice. I mean, people were like, it was hot, you know. I couldn't tell you why they didn't do more. I don't know if it was politics, you know. I don't know if it was like a threat in terms of how much heat we were getting. but it just kind of started to, I could kind of see the writing on the wall a little bit, it kind of just slowly started to filter out. And especially for me, like when Terry left, because like I said, I think Taylor was a huge, really liked what I could do and really wanted to, because he really pushed. I know he really pushed for me on Nitro when I got my win with Mark Starr. That was one of my first Nitros. He pushed for that. And then I was supposed to get another one with against Marty Jannetty, and that got pulled by Kevin Sullivan. Now, the only thing I do know, and I will say this, what I got told on that there was beef with Page and Sullivan. So there is some backstage politics there. And, I was a Page guy. Somebody else was a Sullivan guy. And, yeah. So I think some of that stuff went in there, because I thought it was really bizarre, because after the Benoit match, I'd known Chris and had interaction with him, but not to any real extent, obviously, in that match. I remember after that match, Eric Bischoff, Arn Anderson, who was, I think Arn was the agent on that match, came up and was like, "Kid, you just made your career tonight." And Chris was like, Eric was there and was like, "Wow, really good stuff." And Chris goes, I'll work with him anytime, anywhere. And that's another big, in my career, moment for me. Because, I was like, wow, that's pretty big coming from Chris. Chris hadn't hit the stride that he eventually went to. But I knew him from, I'd seen stuff he had done in Japan and stuff in the States. And I was just, his work was just amazing. I loved working with him. I worked a few house shows with him as well. And yeah, so it was like, I thought, okay, this is okay, here it is. Like I was like, I took that match as like, this is my pay-per-view. I think I did 2 springboards in it. I did a springboard drop kick. I think I missed with a springboard leg drop. I was like, I did a springboard back elbow. I'm like, I'm gonna put it out there. And I thought that I did that. And you would think, somebody that literally, I think that was my 3rd or 4th match of my entire career against Benoit on Nitro. Because I hadn't worked any indies. I had worked some, stuff in the power plant and matches in the power plant. And I did the one thing with Pat at MGM. And I think Mark Starr. And I think that was it. And then that was that match. And I thought, man, this is okay. I think I've got a good foothold in on this. And then from there, it just kind of went. I think Terry left. And, after that, it was just, we really didn't get that much other than the runs that we had with Goldberg and Benoit and things that Raven had. At that time. And then it wasn't long before they had the riff with Saturn, and they started doing, I'm going to win the freedom of the flock kind of thing.
Which kind of, put all the guys down. You know what I mean? Because then you guys are all wrestling each other, and then it kind of all gets convoluted, and you lose the whole gist of the group. And like, you guys all felt like you lost a little bit with that.
Yeah. And there was no real, like, this is where we're going with it. This is what's going to happen. It was like, day to day. And it was so just, just a mind eraser in terms of like, what are we doing? Where are we going? And of course they were trying to change, and they had that whole shifting of power because Nash started to take over the booking around that time. And they were wanting to really shift the Saturday night show for just young guys, and just leave the live events and pay-per-views more for the vets,
right?
Because Jimmy Hart was in charge of all that. And I remember the last thing we did with the flock, once they split us, it was like, this is how crazy WCW was. I went to a person in the office, I can't remember her name. And I said, I just want to be clear. After tonight, I'm done. I'm not on next week. because they were talking about, hey, you're going to disappear for like, 90 days. We're going to revamp you, start thinking, and I'd already been thinking of character that I wanted to do. A little prelude to, or foreshadowing to the blonde hair that I had with my, my last few matches with WCW. And I had a character in mind that I wanted to do. And so I clarified with everybody, hey, I'm done. And they said, yeah, absolutely. So I go home. I get a phone call from Paige that Monday, like at 2:00, going, bro, where are you at? We're working tonight. Are you all right? And I'm like, I'm at home in Atlanta. And he goes, we got a match and so. And I go, well, nobody told me that. I talked to Annette. She was office, somebody in the office. I can't remember her last name. And I said, they told me I was done. Like I was finished. So there was complete confusion. It's like the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing, kind of thing. It was just, and I don't know if that put a bad taste in their mouth, for me, as far as I was concerned at the time. But I was assured, like, okay, it's all good. Well, that 90 days turned into 6 months. And they would fly me out for Saturday nights because that's where they wanted to start introducing new talent. And I had this new gimmick I was doing. That's why I had the blonde hair, because eventually I wanted to do because I had like silver and black tights, and I was doing my hair silver, and I was doing like the black, beard and stuff. And I want to kind of be like this new breed, new age athlete, a big guy, 250 pounds, can do stuff cruiserweight, all the flying. And there was flips and stuff that I hadn't done that I was just kind of saving, kind of for that moment. And, I had to, be ready at any time. And so it's like, I'm having to bleach my hair blonde, and that silver would only hold for like a week or two. And I have to keep getting it put in, and then I'm getting flown out. Oh, we're going to cut a vignette. And then we wouldn't do it. I'd literally fly somewhere, get there. Oh, we can't do it. We don't have time. I'd fly back home. Wouldn't work. Wow. Wouldn't do anything. Just fly back home. And that went on for like, out of that 6 months, probably on and off for at least 3 of them, maybe 4. And it was the same thing every time until the very end. And that's when I started having some matches, and that's when I had the blonde hair, because I was just like, I'm not going to keep going and doing this to myself all the time. At that point, I was just kind of like, again, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I saw that shit of WCW sinking, and I was like, I just don't care. I'll be professional and I'll work. I'll honor my contract and my obligation. But I was like, I'm not going to put forth that much effort. If they don't care for me, like that's how I was feeling at the time. Then I'm not going to, I'll do what I need to do, and that's it. And so I kind of did that. And the only thing I did to try to save grace with me was I just went to the announcers and I said, look, I'm going to be this guy. Like, I'm lost. Like, it just made sense. And I said, I want to be kind of directionalist. So if you see me in the match and I'm kind of, like I'm lost without the flop.
Right.
Because everybody wanted to try to go. I looked at, what Kidman was doing, and everybody was trying to be like, above and beyond and go. And at that point, I was just like, I might as well just play this as like, be the guy that's like, he doesn't know what to do with himself since the flock is gone. And so we might as well work that. Because after that, it was like every match, they just jobbed me out. I'd been off for 6 months, and the first match I had was with Rick Fuller, and Rick had been off for like 8 months with a torn bicep. And they had us in a match, and they had him going over, which didn't make sense to me. Rick's a good guy, but Rick had been an enhancement talent. The flock had, all the TV time we had. Cause my gosh, we did every TV, we did every pay-per-view. We were on TV a lot, and I don't mind losing if it makes sense, And I was looking at it like, what's the vantage point for two guys that have been off TV? I've been off TV for 6 months. He's been off for 8. Nobody wins in this scenario, unless we're going to go somewhere. And that's where Jimmy was like, well, go talk to Kevin. And I said, do you think I should? And he goes, yeah, go ask him like, hey, are we going to, because I was curious too. I was like, is this going to be a storyline we're going to go into? Because I just didn't know. And I'd been out of the loop so long. I was just trying to get some information. And I just remember walking in and Kevin was sitting there lacing his boots up. And I was like, Kevin, man, just curious, this match with Rick. I said, is this a one-time deal or are we going anywhere with it? And he said, no, he goes, one-time deal. He goes, but he's going over because when you walk out, they're going to expect you to win. I was just like, okay, I don't have any problems with Kev whatsoever. He and I, the interactions we had were good. I never had any issues with him, but I was just, I was kind of getting really more disheartened even more at this time, and that's kind of how it went from there. Cause then the only great thing was I got to work the Steiners. I got to work Rick and Scott before I left. And I just remember working that match with Rick, and they were building him up for Goldberg at the time. And they said, don't get any offense in on and let him eat you up. And I was just like, okay, I'm they don't have anything for me.
Right.
I was like, I got to get out of here. I literally about walked out that night. At that time, my professionalism was that breaking point where I was like, this is not cool. Like, I just was like, I just want to leave. And I just didn't like the atmosphere that was there at the time. And it was just not a good environment. But I kind of gathered myself and he said, you know what? It's not going to do you any good. Just go through the match, get, do your thing, look at it as an opportunity to just put some stuff on tape,
Yep.
And went to Rick, and the cool thing, he was like, Rick goes, fuck that. Nah, that does nothing for me and does nothing for you. He goes, get your shit in. And I was like, are you sure? Because this is coming from the office. He goes, I'll deal with the office if there's any blowback.
Right.
And he goes, get your stuff in. And was able to, we, didn't do, a lot, but was good. And then I think I finished up with Scott. Was probably, I think my last match, when I was
so
like,
how do you end it with WCW and get with WWF? Do you just call Terry Taylor and like, I'm out of there? You know what I mean? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I of course, what was said with Bruce and I years ago, I didn't know if that still held or not. I mean, people can say things at the time, because a lot of people tell you what you want to hear, and so I didn't know how valid that was. And now I had heard through the grapevine from Lodi, from Matt, from the Hardys, who Lodi was friends with Matt and Jeff, and I remember hearing. I think this was right before the Fox split up. He goes, I was talking to Matt and Jeff, and they were like, JR really likes your stuff. And, that was kind of that was a good, I needed that, hearing that. And I was like, okay, good to know. So that gave me a little bit of like comfort, and so my only real connection, I mean, my most current connection was through Terry, and I called him and wanted to know, hey, if I'm not with WCW anymore, do I have a spot there in WWF? And he was like, absolutely. And of course that phone call never happened.
Of course. Typical.
Yeah. But it was like, yes, you have a spot here. And if you take, and so, yeah, I, got out of there and signed with WWF to bring me in to work with Val Venus.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So what's the plan? Like, what do they say? I mean, you're just Scott Vick, and they're gonna bring you in. Like, what was the game plan?
That was it. I flew to Stanford and met with. I hadn't met with Vince yet. I met I met with JR and Bruce Pritchard. And well, actually, we just talked about the contract. And, you know, we worked out a contract, and the initial talk was about Val Venis and bringing me in to be the guy that kind of ran him out of the porn industry, like, you know, and that was kind of roughly being discussed. But I signed with them and came back, you know, flew back to Atlanta, and I want to say it was a couple of months before I flew back up to Stanford. And that's when I met Batista for the first time, which I remember him. I think they had just signed him. And I was up there doing interviews. I met with Vince, and, you know, they did all this really extensive personal info on you, like just asking, like, if you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be and why? And you like chocolate, or you know, what's your favorite ice cream? It was a lot of personal stuff, you know, and like getting a lot of background, because I know what they're doing. They want to find, hey, what kind of gimmick can we work with this guy, you know? And so I'd gone over to the studio, and yeah, Batista came in a hoodie and stuff, and I was like, okay. I mean, I've seen a lot of big guys, but he's one of the few up there with like Sid Vicious and Nathan Jones that I was just like, my gosh, that's a big dude. And he was way bigger then than after, you know, he started wrestling, because everybody, you just never the same size, you know.
Yeah,
just the toll from the road and things like that. And I met him there, and so yeah, that kind of started the track with that. And I think they're talking about bringing me in, and I was supposed to, I think, start in like a few weeks or something, or a month, that they wanted me to show up like ringside with a bunch of girls. And how they were going to debut me was I would come in and befriend Val. We'd do a tag match, and then I'd stab him in the back once again, and then I'd be on my own. That's how it was laid out to me. And then, of course, you know, all the things that were going on at the time with that character is so controversial. You know, Vince, you know, they were losing sponsors over that, you know, and people weren't happy with it, especially when they did that castration thing.
yes.
Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah, it was going good, and that's when they moved. They moved Val to, he did the right to censor gimmick.
Yep.
And so I kind of got, at that point, I was like, well, just working dark matches. And the writing team, we had a couple meetings. They had some ideas, and we would go to Vince, and Vince was like, no, I don't see that for him. Like, you know, it never, you know, we want to do something like a Matrix gimmick, like with the cameras. Like they talked about doing some kind of like a Matrix type deal. That was brought up at one time, and went to Vince, and he was like, no, I don't want him to do that. And that happened quite a few times, and it ended up just going on and on. And I want to say that the last big thing I got, they were going to team me with Boss Man, and me and Boss Man were going to be Vince's security, like his private security. Me, Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor, and then oh my gosh, the guy, he escapes. They were a tag team. They were working in, had been working in Memphis. It was a brother tag team. It wasn't Haas Brothers. Guy's name escapes me right now. But they were going to pair us. And he had gotten into some issues at WrestleMania weekend, and that kind of ended that gimmick. So it's almost like every gimmick that kind of came up, or things they wanted to do, for whatever reason, it just fell apart. And, you know, went through some other stuff where they eventually wanted to tag me with Val, but I'd worked a match the night before against D'Lo, and I had taken a clothesline the wrong way, and it really messed my neck up. Like I couldn't move my neck, couldn't do anything. And I get to TV the next day, and they're like, "Oh, we're tagging you with Val, like taping, like, okay, this is my debut." And I'm like, "Oh, this sucks. I can't move." And normally it'd be like, I'm going to work through this, but I hadn't debuted yet. So I was like, I don't want to go out there with stiff, like that could have ended it for me. If I had a bad match or it didn't look good or something like that, I was like, I literally, I couldn't move. I mean, it was like doing, like just really bad. And of course they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We can, it's no big deal. It's just a taping. We'll get back to it," which they never did. And then they bought WCW, and that's where the wheels really started to kind of fall off at that point for me.
Too many guys, right? I mean, they would sign WCW and they would bring in a bunch of those guys, and then all the other guys would kind of move to the wayside. Just way too many guys.
Yeah, way too many at the time. And then a lot of the stuff that I wanted to get away from in WCW came over to WWF at that time. And honestly, I didn't think it was going to go in that direction because we were in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was the night that Shane showed up at Nitro in Panama. And Vince called a big meeting, and he had everybody in the meeting and was like, because we had heard rumors that they were going to buy WCW.
Yep.
And he confirmed it, but he was like, "Rest assured, hey, listen, guys, this isn't going to change anything. They're going to have their own show, own night, own times. There may be some crossover, obviously, with talent." And I'm thinking this could be awesome. Like now, I think like a lot of people and me as a kid going, "Oh, now we can have like WWF champion versus WCW champion." My mind was going in all these different places where it's like, man, the stuff they can do would be awesome. And especially when they said like, Vince or Shane stepping out of the shadow of his dad and buying the business, buying this wrestling business like Vince had done with his father. And it was like, this is going in the right direction. And then that just all fell apart. They didn't do any of it. They just bled everybody into it and then was like, let's do this WCW invasion. And it could have been, good. And at the beginning I was thinking this would be good. And then it just kind of went to like, it just fell apart. There was no structure to it. And then they just bled everybody into the one roster. And, like I said earlier, I, started having kids and involved in other stuff. And now I really started getting just kind of losing interest in the business, just with all the ups and downs and the postponements and the setbacks and things like that. And I had some distractions going on that kind of took me away from it. I was just like, I'm kind of good with it at this point. I just didn't see anything transpiring past that.
So interesting though. In 2002, there's this rumor going. In 2002, there's a rumor going around with the Kane gimmick, and Kane has his girlfriend Katie Vic. Were you supposed to be obviously the angle with Triple H? She's having sex with this dead Katie Vic girl in the casket, and it's Kane's ex-girlfriend. Were you supposed to be Katie Vic's brother? Like what was that whole rumor?
Okay, this is everybody's heard obviously of this gimmick. It's one of the most, I think it's probably the most infamous storyline in wrestling.
Yeah,
I've read that, I guess, according to your opinions, on things, but it's one of the worst ones. Okay.
Yes.
I had been away for a while from them. Like God, I wish I could have a better time frame on it. But I know I think it wasn't too long after Sean O'Haire, our stuff. And after that, when I couldn't, all of a sudden now no one's even returning my calls, and that kind of dead it out. And so I was just like, you know what? I've been busting my butt my whole life, being in shape, football, wrestling. I'm going to focus on my business. I just kind of stopped working out. I hadn't heard from them. 1 month turned into 3, 3 turned into 6, 6 turned into a year. And again, it's funny, kind of like the Lance Ringo thing. I'm with my family at Pizza Hut on a Sunday night, and I get a phone call with it, and it's Howard Finkel. I'm like, what's Howard calling me on Sunday night for? And he goes, hey, can you make Raw tomorrow? I think it was it's Toronto, maybe. I want to say, I think it was in Canada. I think it was Toronto. And I'm like, of course, yes. Because there have been some rumors about getting the flock back together. I mean, that's kind of what I kind of heard, because I still kind of kept in touch with some guys, and Rave was up there. Perry was there. Kidman was there. So there had kind of been some rumors about that. I kind of heard that. So I thought, oh, maybe it's something to do with that. But I'm going to go get a payday. Sure, I'll go. I can see the boys, because when you're off the road, you just don't stay in contact with the boys. You have very few guys you'll maintain. Like to this day, there's only a couple guys that I have maintained, contact with. And when you're off the road, you just don't do it. So I was like, hey, good payday, see the boys. But I had also been hearing, because I was watching wrestling a little bit, not paying much attention to it, but I'd heard the Katie Vic thing, and I remember going, why are they using this girl with my last name? Because nobody said anything to me. Like I was clueless. I was just like looking at this going, this Kane and Hunter thing, and they're talking about this dead, girlfriend and all this necrophilia and stuff, and they're using my last name. Out of all the last names, why are they using my last name?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and then Howard called, and it still didn't even dawn on me, really, at the time, that it, might have something to do with that. Well, of course, getting there, it had nothing to do with the flock. It was about the Katie Vic gimmick.
Yep.
And they were like, here's the deal. I cut a promo. They were like, I think there's a pay-per-view coming up. And they wanted to have me in the pay-per-view to interfere in the match, I think. Because they were building up, and this will come full circle in a minute, to WrestleMania, which is another thing that was unbeknownst to me by an interview with Tommy Dreamer. So I'm sitting there, they're like, hey, you need to talk about, all this stuff with Kane, how he, your sister was the only one that befriended him in high school. He was a monster. He was this and that. And the source for it was like the Chappaquidda with the Kennedys.
Yeah.
That kind of a deal. Here's, this a cover up, kind of thing. And it was like, I remember my line was like, I did the thing where it was like, yeah, Kane, you had nobody, there was nobody in high school. Everybody was afraid of you. You were this monster. You were disfigured. You were this. The only friend you had was like my sister. My sister was your best friend, took care of you. And then the accident. And you took advantage of my sister. But the question is, did you take advantage of her while she was alive or dead? That was what they wanted me to say.
Wow.
So, I did all this, and I'm still really stunned. And of course, I mean, I'm out of shape. I'm heavy. I haven't worked, which, I mean, I can still go work and have solid, match, but I wasn't in shape like I had been, And so after that, again, I think I went to Nashville the following week. And then that's when it was right after that they said, hey, we're going to just end this at the pay-per-view. Like, we're not going to continue, because they were catching, again, how do I always catch these gimmicks with Val that has the most heat, from sponsors? And then they lump me in with the Katie Vic gimmick, and they all get kiboshed. And they said, hey, so this is gonna die out here. And so I'm like, okay, great. So I go back home. And I don't know how long it was before stuff started popping up on that. I think part of it why I just stayed away from everything for so long was there's all this, I would always read stuff and I'm like, I really want to set the record straight because I'm watching interviews with Bruce Pritchard and he's going, well, we brought Scott in and he just looked bad in the match. And Vince was like, he can't, they're like, he's just not ready to, to do this kind of thing. The match was, and I was like, there's so much more to it than that. Like everybody's getting the office side of it. Well, here's the real story. Like for however long they run that gimmick, I had no idea that they were, because they're talking about that's how they were going to debut me. And I'm going, well, that would be pretty pertinent information for me to know. Because had I known that, I would have been in shape.
Yep.
And then what really got me was I read an interview that Tommy Dreamer did. And he said they were asking about the Katie Vic thing. And he was like, yeah, he goes, they wanted to that's how they were going to bring in Scott Vick and talking about it. And they go, Vince, that was Vince's idea. And they go, Vince, he's not with the company. Like Vince didn't even know I was with the company. Not on contract. And they wanted to bring me in, and Tommy Dreamer said in the match, the idea was to have me main event at WrestleMania against Hunter in that interview. And I'm like, I remember I read that a couple years ago, and I was like, man, that really would have been important information to know.
Right, if that's true. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, my gosh, a main event at WrestleMania, and I haven't even wrestled for him on TV. Yeah, so it was just really bizarre in the whole thing. And I'm like, how can they be that disorganized? Because they were always so organized with things. And now again, this is just one man's story, but he said he was in the office at the time and this was the discussion in the writing room. And people were like, yeah, Vince, he's not with the company anymore. But yeah, I don't know. I still can't figure that one out.
So strange, right? Like everything, Bruce being weird, Dreamer being weird, Vince it's so like the story is nuts. And just the gimmick itself is so weird. It's like they want you to be the brother of Katie Vic and have Kane be like this insane character and necrophilia. It's just like a really odd gimmick.
It was, but it was like, like at the time I was thinking, too, this is a huge opportunity for me. Because, Johnny Ace was it was kind of relaying a lot of this, to me, when I flew up on that Monday with some other people and we were talking about it and I was like, wow, this is like really, really big. Cause I remember calling people going, oh man, I would be at a pay-per-view with, Hunter, come on, Kane, you can't get much bigger than that, they're up there at the top of it. And I'm like, okay, wow, this is awesome. But at the same time, I'm like, it's still in the back of my mind. I'm like, it's just weird that I didn't know anything about this. Like it was so last minute and almost like just happenstance. But what really kind of burned me was like, I felt like I was a scapegoat as to why they didn't continue with that storyline. Right. Because I wasn't in shape and the match wasn't that good and this, that, and the other, and they can't. And I was like, no, the storyline was bad. It was, they were just catching a lot of heat for it, and when I showed up at that, and I think I was in Nashville that Monday after I shot that promo, the previous Monday, they were like, yeah, we're just going to end this because this storyline is just, it's not good for us. PR is bad, So that's what I was told, So yeah, I don't know. It's just a very weird and bizarre gimmick and storyline, and a way to bring somebody in.
So like off-putting too. It's like the necrophilia thing. He screws her brains out in the casket. And it was so weird. It's like nuts. Like maybe the worst thing they've ever done, like period. It's just so tasteless. It was awful.
Yeah. And I think, and that's what I was saying. I think it hands down is probably the worst thing that they've done. And I think I've seen it being rated as like on several sites as being the worst story gimmick in wrestling history. And I'm like, I hate that I, associated with it, but a lot of people don't know the story behind, like at least my knowledge of it and what I was told from the office.
So was that like the last communication? That's it, the Katie Vic thing, and then you were done?
I think so. I think that was the real last. Again, I'd have to look at the years. I think the last, whatever the year was, I did John, when I wrestled John. That was the real last match I had, because just everything was like so up and down. Like they kept saying they're going to do stuff with me and then they wouldn't. And, I was at home and I got tired of the up and down. It was like a seesaw kind of thing. And it was just getting really frustrating at that point for me. So
it's almost like the Katie Vic thing was like almost like a little bit of a rib or something. You know what I mean? Like what is going
right?
on here?
It's like you just set me up, on something with with that. And I thought that until I read that Tommy Dreamer interview. And I was like, okay, there. And I always thought, Vince. Like I know Vince. At least I think Vince, liked me and my potential and what I could do. I know it wasn't long before that. I know I was at TV, and one of the agents came back and said, "Hey, we need you to do this security gimmick." It was when Austin and Taker were having their run, and they're like, "We need you to do something where Austin and Taker are gonna get into a altercation in the back, and we want you to be a part of this security detail to like break it up." And I just worked a match, and I remember going to the meeting, going over what was going to happen and stuff. And I was sitting there, and I remember Vince and Shane were sitting there and talking, and they were like talking to each other and looking at me. And then Shane came over and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, so-and-so said I need to be a part of this security." And he goes, "No, you're not doing this." Like, and not in a bad way. He was like, you're not going to be a part of it. I don't feel like it was in the way of being like in a negative. Because Shane was really cool. I had a pretty good relationship with Shane, and we talked a lot. And like I said, with all the as many times as as some stuff got presented to Vince, I felt like there was a certain degree of Vince was waiting for the right thing. It just wasn't this kind of deal where it was like, there's really nothing there with this kid, because I was doing in my dark match, I was doing all my springboard stuff, and see, nobody was doing that in WWF when I was there. And you really couldn't. The ropes were so much different, so I had to like springboard from the turnbuckle, right off the turnbuckle, and I was springboard, and I was beating guys with that springboard. And I remember the office, I don't know who it was, but one of them said, "You need to stop doing the springboards in the dark matches before we're going live on TV," which I get. Sometimes it's like you're doing, but my thing was like, well, put me on TV then. If I'm,
right, yeah. Yep.
I'm not going to stop, because I remember one time Shane had asked why I wasn't doing. I would do like this back springboard elbow inside the ring, but I really stopped doing the springboard drop kick. And just because they had told me, and I was still really green. I'd only been in the business for 4 years at the time. Yeah, 96. Yeah, 4 years at the time or so. And I was just like, "Yes, sir." I won't do it. I just didn't have the wherewithal to really be like, "No, you need to get your shit over, like stand out." I just didn't know that, because I didn't grow up like a lot of the guys did, running the road, working these work in the towns like everybody did back in the day, where you had all the promotions, from Mid-South to, Florida Championship Wrestling, all those things. It was pretty much just like, I went in, I got trained and got thrust right into it. Like, here you go. Nobody really gave me the rule book on, here's what you do, what you don't do. Like, hey, kid, take what you can get when you can get it. You have to, and especially like with Vince likes that bravado, not in a way that you want to be disrespectful, arrogant, or anything like that, but he likes somebody that's going to stand up and go, hey, look, man, I'm doing these springboards. This is kind of my thing, but they told me not to do it. Like, like hindsight's 20/20. I wish I had taken that route, but I really didn't know any better at the time. And so I'm like, I was doing all these things and they seemed super interested in everything that I was doing. And then it just, went kind of very flat once again. And I just don't know how much WCW had to do with that. I think there was some of that in there. Maybe. But
any regrets, like in the business, the WCW and WWE? Was there any kind of regrets? Anything you wish you did? Anything you wish you did differently? Like you said, maybe getting a little sterner with them on some things.
Yeah, like I would like that. I wish I would have had known better, to just kind of be firm and hold my ground a little bit and go, hey, like what's, I've been doing these dart matches for a year now, they were putting me in there with talent, and a lot of them were TV talent. And sometimes I was going over, now they're dart matches, but I think they were really looking at, hey, and getting a feel for me and what I could do and who I could hang with and things like that. And always got good feedback. Cause I traveled with, even WCW, I traveled with Brian Clark, Brian Adams. He and I traveled a good bit together, and you kind of hear kind of through the grapevine kind of stuff, like, what you're doing, where you're going, and it sounded good. It sounded positive. So yeah, I don't know. It was a real shock to me sometimes why I didn't, go further, than it did. But regrets, like I said, I honestly probably wish I'd worked through that neck injury and just gone out and just rolled the dice and done that match with Val Venus, because I would have been on TV at that time, and we could have probably worked through. I could have said, hey, look, my neck's really this, that. Here's what I can do, and kind of work with it. But again, I think that's just kind of being green a little bit and going, I don't want to blow my debut, like not being able to move. I want to be able to do the stuff I can do, and really, like, this is my chance to show them. It's live TV. This isn't a dart match. Boom. Or taping. I think it was a taping. I don't think it was live, but like, it's for real right now. We're recording this. This is going to go on Heat or whatever we were recording, at the time. And, take that as kind of that Benoit moment where it's like, okay, this is your pay-per-view, man, rock it. And I just didn't feel like I couldn't be at my best. I can work injured, I worked with separated shoulder, busted I worked through it. Those things I could do. Just this, I just couldn't move. It was like a burning sensation in my neck and in my arm. And, that one I would go, hey, that would have been a time to just go out and tear it up regardless, do what you can do. And kind of, because I think that might have really solidified my slot and kind of locked it in before WCW guys came over there.
True. So as we hit the wind down here, head towards the finish, who are some of like your favorite guys that you worked? I know you mentioned Benoit, how good that was and how good he thought you were, but who are some of like your favorite guys that you worked with during your run?
I like working Goldberg because he was so over. You know,
Yeah.
Goldberg was great. Steve McMichael, believe it or not.
Wow. Mongo.
Yeah, just because I thought, I mean, I'm like, if I can get a good match, I thought our matches were pretty good. They weren't, you know, tear the roof off kind of matches, but I'm like, I mean, God rest his soul. He just wrestling wise, it was tough for him at times, I think, you know, and it is for guys coming out of football to be able to transition, you know, to the wrestling part of it.
Yep.
And especially with Steve, and he was a good guy, and I wrestled him numerous times, but he was just, you know, I tried to keep it really simple because I literally on all those matches laid them all out and called all the matches, which he was the veteran in it. I mean, he was a 4 horseman.
Yeah.
But he was just, I mean, he was green as well. And I thought, you know, he's just a brawler. Let's keep it simple. Don't do anything too technical. Let's just punch and kick and do what he does best. And I thought in those matches, we did some of that really well. So he was really good. I remember one time I was traveling with Brian Adams, and in WCW, if you weren't on the show, you could leave. And that's whatever show it was, live, whatever. WWF was completely different. They wanted everybody to stick around to the very end, watch all the matches, do all that. And so at WCW, we were sitting there with our bags, getting ready to leave, and we were 5 minutes from going live. And Arn comes up to me and goes, "Kid, I hate to do this to you, but your second segment with Mongo." And I'm in my street clothes. And we're getting ready to leave. And it was, I think, Bret Hart did an interview with Mean Gene. And then we were the first match. So second segment of the show. And I remember Steve coming up just white as a ghost going, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" I said, "I don't know. Just go get dressed. Let's get dressed." I mean, we didn't have time to do anything. And so we're sitting there getting dressed, and he's like, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" I said, "Look, man," I go, "let's just worry about the finish." I go, "Pick me up to slam me. I'll do a slip slam back behind you, duck my punch, hit me with your football tackle, and scoop me up and give me your finish." And he goes, "Okay. And what else are we going to do?" I go, "We're just going to call it in the ring." And he goes, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, we don't have time. We call it in the ring." I said, "The only thing, Lodi will distract you at the beginning and I'll get heat on you." I said, "Other than that, we'll just call it." So we just called it in the ring. And actually, I think that was one of his better matches, honestly. I mean, at least with me, you know, I think it was more relaxed and we just kind of went with it. And I don't think he was thinking.
Yep.
You know, as much, because there was times we would have certain spots. I know and he was so strong. I mean, he was such a strong dude. I went to shoot him off and I told him, "Watch my clothesline." And he just reversed me and just shot me in the ropes. And he threw me so hard, I couldn't even get my feet up under me. And I just grabbed onto the ropes because I didn't know what I was coming off to take, you know, because he didn't say anything. You know, I was like going to clothesline him and he just reversed it and chucked me in there.
Yep.
But as bizarre as that may be, yeah, he was really good. I like working with. I like Paige. I like working with Paige. We had good stuff. We had some chemistry. I mean, you know, knowing, you know, from the power plant, and I'd worked them on quite a few like Saturday nights and some Thunders and things like that. So, you know, I think we meshed well together. And one guy that was really, really good, he never made it on TV, but I worked a lot of dark matches with him, I don't know if you remember Steve Bradley.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
The Mofo. He was, I met him in Memphis because I dislocated my jaw in WWF. And was out for like, 6 weeks turned into 12 because I ended up in my my wisdom teeth that I had room for to come in the lower got infected because of the dislocation. And it turned into a longer period, and I was out more. So they're like, hey, you've been out. We want you to go to Memphis to knock off the ring rust, and we got a gimmick we want you to work on down there with worked on with one of the headbangers. Mosh, maybe? I can't remember whose name was what. And then Kevin Thorne, before he became Kevin Thorne. And yeah, we were going to work. I was like, we're going to do a gimmick down there and get in shape. And that's where I met Steve. And Steve was down there, had been down there working with them in developmental, and was their world champion down there. And then we started coming up doing dart matches with WWF. And Steve was an unbelievable worker. I mean, it was like people talk about flair and things like that, where it's like, it's so easy. He and I just knew, his timing was just impeccable. You know, he never rushed me, you know, he'd let me sell. I didn't have to say anything to him, where a lot of guys will hit you with something and then they just come and get you and scoop you up. And it's like, work it, you know, let the people, you know, let me sell it. You work your gimmick. You know, if you hit me with something big, now if it's something supposed to be fast paced, that's one thing, but it's like, it was just so smooth. And it's like, I could do things. And he knew he was very good at reading my body language and vice versa, you know? And I mean, I could do that with anybody, but he was really, really good. And we worked a lot of matches together, and he's one of my favorite guys. And it was unfortunate that he never made it, you know, anywhere, and obviously, you know, passed away. But it was super fun to work with him. He could do anything you wanted to do. And it was literally like a night off. Like, you could sit there and it wouldn't even blow me up. I mean, we could go 30 minutes and it was just like, it was 5.
It's a random one, but that's a good one.
What's that?
He's a random one, but that's a good one. Like, a lot of
it's very random, but you know, but it was. He sticks out in my mind as guys that, you know, that I worked that. It was just super fun. Like, I enjoy. It was like, yes. I mean, we got to the point where we're working so much where it's just like, oh, let's do the match we did in Connecticut, you know, in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And wherever we're at, you know, let's do that match. And then I remember a really cool match. We were actually in Charleston, and we had just come back up, both of us, because we've been down in Memphis, and we just come up. And so we had worked out a match. And at that time, those dart matches, no, they want you to go like 6-8 minutes. You know, you got 2 minutes worth of intros. So you got about 4 minutes to work, something like that, right? So we kind of structured this match. We'll go out and do this match. Well, we're in the middle of it, and the refs just go, keep going. Like, we were coming up, like, we're going, it's time to go. Like, we kind of worked our stuff, and we knew where our go home spot was. And I can't remember who the ref was. And I'm like, because, you know, we'd asked like the ref, where are you at time, you know, time wise, because you want to finish on time and do your stuff. And he goes, keep going. And I remember going, we don't have anything else to do. And it was like, let's just keep working it. And I remember talking to Steve, and I was like, let's do flair. Let's just do like the flair stuff. We'll just shift into like trying to do like get me in a figure 4, and we'll just work spots out of it and kind of do like old school, you know, flair match. And we just kind of transitioned, and that turned into, we went, I think, 12, 15 minutes in a dart match, and they just kept going because we were waiting to get the go home spot. And I don't know if it was a test kind of to see what we could do on the fly. I mean, I don't know. No one ever said anything, or I don't know if they were just messing with us, you know, like they had extra time or something and was like, hey, keep pushing them and go. But we ended up just, you know, worked that for a while, and it ended up being like really cool and really fun.
Love that. So as far as you, what's next? Are you going to be doing anything wrestling related? What's next? What's coming up down the pike?
You know, man, since I started this whole social media getting on, because they said, I mean, this is the first time I've been on any social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, things like that. I'm still, you know, in this infancy with it for me, because I wasn't on it personally in any aspect, any form or fashion at all. So, you know, in starting this, I mean, it's generated some interest, and I mean, obviously we're talking, you know, now, and you know, the thing, next thing I got coming up, I'm booked at 𝐓𝐘𝐒 in November. I think we're doing I think it's planned. I think it's a done deal. That we're kind of doing I think a flock reunion there. I don't know who all is confirmed. I know Perry and Raven and Lodi, and myself. And I think Riggs is too.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. Which will be good, because Scott and I were really good friends.
Love it. The flock finally, after all these years, getting back together. It's such a great idea.
Yeah, we did it once. We did one wrestle. We did it one other time, and I can't remember when that was. I want to say like maybe like 2013, somewhere in there, maybe maybe a little before that. We did a 𝐓𝐾𝐒 up in Winston-Salem, and that was the first time we had all gotten really back together. You know, for anything like that. Yeah, that kind of stuns me too. I'm surprised there haven't been more interest in trying to get, you know, some of that group back together.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Who do you think is the best, like, flock, if you could rank them? Who's the best members of flock? Because if you think about it, there's a lot of guys in the history of the flock there. You mean you got Lodi, you got Van Hammer, you got Reese, you got you, Kidman, Horace at one point, Raven, Saturn, Stevie for a small point. I'm not sure if I feel like I'm missing somebody, but Riggs, obviously. So, yeah, who would you rank as, like, the best guys in the flock?
Oh man, that's tough. I mean, first you got to put Raven up there at the top.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, just not because it was his baby and his gimmick. I mean, just Raven, you know, his work and everything speaks for itself. And his mind, he's got literally, I mean, his mind for wrestling is super, super keen. But yeah, Raven's at the top. Kidman's up there because Kidman could go. And Kidman and I never worked other than at the power plant. But in working that, I mean, Kidman was another one that, you know, like I said, we didn't have a match on TV or anything like that. We did tags together, and we were always really good together in the tags. But when I did work him, like, you know, in training and stuff, he was really good worker. Really, really good. Got it. Was one of those guys too that had the timing and just kind of knew fluid. Most everybody was like that. You know, I mean, there's, you know, some guys were a little more into it, you know, as far as just the smoothness and the working than others. But, you know, definitely Raves at the top, Saturn, Kidman. And I think I worked Perry twice, and we had really good matches. I like working Perry because Perry was tight, like Benoit said. I like tight workers. You know, I want to feel what you're doing to me. I don't want you to, you know, obviously you don't want to get hurt, but it's easier to sell and work it when you know a guy's, you know, in there and it's snug. You know, I really like that. You know, as opposed to like somebody that's really, really light, because it's like, oh, did he just touch me? Should I sell that or not? You know, like, right. You don't know what it looks like, you know, I'm like, did you just hit me in the back? You know, it's like, I want to feel a little pop. And, you know, Perry was really good to work with. I think I worked Hammer once. I love Hammer. Hammer was an awesome guy. Really good guy. But Yeah, I'm going to keep it at that. I think the top of that is Rave and Saturn, Kidman. Lodi, good worker, but phenomenal hype guy. Was, to me, one of the best in the business. I mean, those signs, man, that was like, it was massive heat. That's why as soon as we started doing matches, I said, can he come out with me on these matches? One, it's great because it's cheap heat or easy. It's always good to have that guy interfere in the match and have somebody that you can use. That's another, tool in the box to add to the match. But yeah, you just walking out with the signs, and it was great PR too, because he always did specific signs for you on your match, and it was something different, all the time. And I think everybody brought something to the table. Riggs was another one. Put Riggs up there. Riggs and I never. No, we did. We worked some house shows against each other. Super easy to work with. Really great worker. And like I said, he and I were friends outside of the business. We played golf together. We hung out time off and things like that. And we traveled some together. And yeah, so you got the Riggs up in there somewhere too, but everybody kind of brought their own thing. Like Ron brought the giant aspect to it, he brought that monster to the party. And then you kind of have the same thing with Hammer, but Hammer could do more than Ron, in the ring. Okay. He wasn't as big, and he could definitely, so he had a little more versatility, in the ring. And you had your cruiserweight and Kidman, and then you just had the Perry thing, who was his like henchman. He was like, I think it's safe to say he was like the henchman of the crew. I don't know where somebody would tab me as in that, because everybody kind of, Kidman was a cruiserweight guy, and me and Riggs, I don't know really where we were at in there. You had Hammer, who was another big monster guy, along with Reese, and then of course Horse came in there at the at the end of it.
A lot of guys, going in and out of the flock. That's for sure. There was a lot.
Yeah,
of
and Stevie. I never got to do a lot with Stevie, not until WWF. I mean, in terms of just like we traveled together a good bit in WWF. We never worked. But I like Stevie. He and I always got along. We got along in the little, the little bit that he was there, because I think he was there in those first couple tapings at MGM with us. Before he left, and then obviously I caught up with him in WWF. But I mean, other than that, work wise with him, like I said, I can't really put anything on other than what I have just seen of him, which he looked, always looked really good and really solid, wrestling wise. And, I think it would have been cool had he been able to stay there.
Yeah.
Well, I think that would have added another element, to it. But, I don't know the whole story, but I think at that time, I don't know how much he and Raven were getting along at the time.
Right. Yep.
I think there was some stuff there that they had to work out or something. And I try not to delve too much into that stuff. I just didn't get in. Like I said, I was never a big politic guy in the back. I was pretty much like, what you see is what you get. If you're cool, you're cool. I'm going to hang out with you. I'm going to be friends. If you're not cool, I'm not going to be an ass to you, but I'm not going to like carry your bags because you can do something for me or you got some kind of pull or power, yeah. I think it would have been cool had he been able to stick around. It added another element to us. I just wish they would have given us that opportunity of a bigger platform, especially to work with other guys, because it's really all about Raven,
Yeah, pretty much.
And we were kind of there, and I get it, and that's fine. It was a huge platform for me. By no means am I complaining about it at all. because it's a huge platform and opportunity for me. Without Raven, I mean, I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity, you know? I mean, I may have, but there was no certainty. I mean, that was something I got right off the bat. And that was a pretty big spot. I mean, because, you know, I caught a lot of heat with guys when I came in. Because it was like, I was 25 years old. And guys were really like, you know, I had heat with some of the top guys coming in because it was like, who's this guy? You know, and there's guys that have been working for years to get, you know, a TV spot. And here I am coming in. And I mean, they threw Raven in. I mean, he was mid card right out the gate. Maybe even a little upper, you know, especially when they got the Goldberg stuff and having the US strap, you know? So yeah, there was some heat when I came in, you know, with things, and guys were just like, you know, where did he come from? Who is he? Because nobody knew me, you know, other than I was friends with Scott Norton at that time, Ron Reese, and of course Canyon, and but I don't think they had even I don't know if they debuted the Mortis gimmick yet, or they were close to it. I can't remember, but yeah, so a lot of guys and I, you know, were kind of like, what's up with this kid, you know, which was kind of hard to deal with, you know, at the time, especially, you know, people you watched growing up and seeing, and because I had no idea, you know, because I was like quiet, you know, I kept to myself. I mean, I would say hey to everybody, and but I was just, it was almost like a respect thing. I didn't want to like be like, oh hey, oh, what are you know. And I think sometimes that could be taken as like, oh, you know, is he like stuck up or you know, something like that. And I just kind of heard through the boys later on. I didn't, like I said, I didn't know it at the time, but had heat with Sting and Lex and the Steiners. Everybody you don't want to have heat with.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, it all worked out. I ended up it all worked out good. I ended up in travel with Lex. And I think that was the first time it kind of cracked the door, because Lex was a big golfer, and we all played golf, and we were playing golf in Colorado on a loop we were doing, and the guys wanted to keep playing, and I was like, I'm done. We just 18, I'm done. And Lex was like, yeah, I am too. And I was traveling with Scott Norton and Brian Clark at the time, and Lex was like, well, I'm going to go to the gym. You want to come with me, and you can just ride with me to wherever we're going after that. I think it's like Wyoming or something. And it was kind of another big point in my career, because I was like, this is Lex Luger, man, you know? And he and I, obviously we had seen each other talk, hey, how are you? And building, but we hadn't had really that much interaction. And yeah, I ended up and ran that loop with him. And it was like really cool, really smarted me up to a lot of stuff, and, you know, just training and eating and kind of the business. And we just talked. And then next thing I know, it was like, you know, cause he was tight with Buff and the Steiners and Lex. They were all really super tight. And I remember walking into our hotel room, or I walked in, and they all were in there. And I was like, it was like really intimidating, you know, because like here they all sitting there. And of course, and it was cool because Sting actually said, I mean, that's when I first knew, I mean, really confirmed that I had heat with these guys, and I didn't know why. And I think that obviously traveling with Lex kind of broke that ice, you know, and like we had common ground in playing football. And you know, we talked about all that when we were on the road, on the road, and they said, yeah, like, you know, we thought you were this and kind of that, and Lex, you know, said that, and after that, it's like, not that I never really had any issues with him. It just was never, you know, just like the hearsay, water cooler talk, like, you know, there's this and that, and they don't know, they just didn't know me, you know, and then that opportunity, I don't know why it happened. I don't know why he said that, you know, wanted me, you know, asked me to, you know, come back, you know, and travel with him. And yeah, it was just, that was another kind of big part in my career, kind of that moment, you know, pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. But in an interesting way, like that's just so cool. Like you get to be friend, if you will, Lex Luger and these guys. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
because like I said, I mean, obviously, I had grown up, you know, watching a lot of, you know, and I mean, I was never like when I first got in there, like, oh my gosh, this is so and so. It's kind of weird. I was just like, this is what I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be here with these guys doing it. It was still like really like, okay, this is pretty cool. It's like, you know, and all these guys, and I'm seeing all these guys for the first time. But when you're there and you're first getting there and you're seeing guys in the back, it's like there's just like a football team. You know, I mean, that was one of the biggest things in football with me. Yeah, I miss playing games and stuff like that, but I miss the time with the boys, you know, with my teammates. Same thing with wrestling. That's one of the biggest things, you know, I think you really miss, running the road with the boys and all the stories, all the things you get into, and, you know, and just having that time and that connection, because it's like same thing with football and wrestling. There's only so many people that get to that level. You know, and know what it is you're going through on a day-to-day, you know, on a day-to-day basis, you know, and, you know, not everybody can relate. You know, I talked to my friends, you know, that I had before I went into wrestling, and nobody really understands, you know, what it's like. But those guys do, you know, and then it's like, I spent more time with them than I did my family, you know?
Yeah, they become your family in a sense.
Yeah, it really does. And it's like, you know, you got that relationship with them. And sometimes by the end of some of those shows, you didn't even want to talk to anybody anymore. Some of those trips would get a little silent because it's just like, okay, I need a break. We need a break. Like, you know, it's because it's such a grind. That's the thing that I don't think people really understand. The toll it really takes in the grind from, you know, flying and driving and working out and trying to stay in shape. And it's like, you don't want to miss time. So, you know, when you're hurt, yeah, you know, you have to work, you know, you got to work through it to, you know, best that you can. And, you know, it can take its toll, you know, but those guys, everybody knows that. And it's like, you know, all those guys kind of get it through. And it's like the funny, odd things, like people don't know. Ming and I went to go see Halloween H2O in some city that we were at. Just bizarre, random.
Yep.
I don't know. We was like, wanted to go do something different. And he was, you know, I kind of talked to Ming and Barb, and we became, you know, on the road and just talking to him. I never really traveled with them, but we talked a lot at the shows, and we were on a lot of house shows that I did with WCW. And Ming was really cool with me. And I told Arn Anderson this story, and this is another big kind of, there's so many you forget sometimes, but this one popped out. It was at MGM, and I'd been there for that week, and he knew I had kind of had heat with the guys, because they were kind of, you know, I think it obviously had been kind of going around and stuff like that. And like I said, I was just kind of quiet and came in and sat down, put my gear on, did all my stuff. And he asked me, it was so wild because I was sitting right beside me, and he says, "Brother, how you doing? How's it going? You all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm good." And he goes, "I hear some stuff." And he goes, "If anybody bothers you, let me know." And, you know, at the time I didn't know anything really about Ming other than �𝐿𝐷𝐿 and, you know, from the business standpoint, you know, what you see on TV. And of course you learn really quickly who he is, you know, and it just Rivera is one of the toughest guys in the business, toughest guys, period. But also one of the nicest, just unbelievable, great guys. Same thing with like Barb and a lot of those guys. And Yeah, I told Arn that I would go up to North Carolina to work out with Lodi at his training facility in Charlotte, and Arn was up there a lot, and we were just kind of sitting around talking one time, and I had kind of got brought up, and I remember telling that story to Arn, and he was just like, "Oh, that's pretty good to have that." I go, "Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have somebody but he was just that was just another, I think, one of those moments that it was like, I didn't really at the time really understand it until a little bit later, where it was like, huh,
Pretty awesome.
it's pretty neat.
Yeah, to have that kind of relationship, especially with him of all people. I mean, it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So before we let you go tonight, where can everybody find and follow you? Like you said, you're new to social media. Where can everybody find you on there?
On Facebook, I'm not under Sick Boys, under Scott Vick. On Facebook, and Instagram, I think it's Scott Sick Boy Vic on Instagram. And like I said, I'm just getting my toes wet right now in it, and really trying to build the social media part for me, because it's uncharted territory for me. Because like I said, I mean, I'm pretty much just with it. Like I'm still like, some people are like, I'm like, yes, sorry I got back so late with you or whatever. I'm still trying to figure out, where to go on this and how to navigate through all this. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I posted something, I didn't want to post it, or like, oh, can I fix that? And, and what does it mean when I do this and that? So it's like, it's still really in its infancy for me, but right now it's just, I'm going through Facebook, and on Instagram.
All right. Awesome. Great to go back down memory lane. Awesome that this is the first interview. So tremendous. Thank you again for that. But Sick Boy, Scott Vick, thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate the interest, and good talk.